Just a week and a half to go now until Defiant Wrestling rolls into Sunderland for the Magnificent Seven, and the ReLoaded podcast is once again on the air. Dave Bradshaw with you. And at the end of last week's show, unfortunately, we seemed to lose our connection with my co-presenter, James R. Kennedy, the now former commentator of the year 2018. I understand he's back with us today. Are you okay?
You're really enjoying this, aren't you? I mean, okay, you've got your way, Bradshaw. You're king of the hill. You like to think you're commentator of the year, but you know that award meant everything to me, and you have torn it away from me, and that, you know, I'm not angry. I'm not even disappointed. I'm just upset. Well,
you're upset that you got caught. Is what it is, because you've been lying through your teeth for the first 2 months of this year, pretending that you legitimately... Well, it's not about me winning. It's about justice being done. It's about the fact that if you cheat in life, you should get caught, and you've now been caught.
Can't a guy just have some fun? You know, 2018 was such a good year for me, and I wanted 2019 to start off the right way. I really did. Hand on heart, I believed, you know, maybe this can be my year. And that's what that Defiant Commentator of the Year award meant to me. You know, I covet that award. It meant the world to me, and you, sir, have ripped it away. And let's not let facts get in the way here, because I was blissfully ignorant, shall we say, and happy in my own little bubble, and you had to come along and pop that bubble. And I can't run away from it anymore, but I'm just distraught. I really am.
It wasn't me. It was a mystery Russian man. Who spoke to you on the phone, and you readily started boasting about your exploits in rigging the vote for the award, and you've got your comeuppance. I don't see what there is to be any way upset about. If you're going to live by the sword, you die by the sword.
Well, how was I meant to know that Nikolai Volkov was you know, a fake name? That he actually wasn't Mr. Nikolai Volkov Jr. You can hear by the tone in my voice that there is great sadness, Dave. You know, this is almost like a bereavement in the family for me, because I was on cloud nine. I was top of the world, but I will say this, and I want you to listen very carefully. We have a very special guest coming up later on today's podcast, and I cannot wait to see your reaction when he puts you in your place.
Yeah, I know. This is interesting timing, isn't it? Because your reaction to being caught red-handed, caught with your hands in the cookie jar, is to try and change the subject and to try and intimidate me by bringing on the one man who you know gets under my skin unlike anyone else, and that is John Bad Bones Klinger. So you've booked him as a guest for the show without asking me, and that's your somehow defense mechanism for everything that's gone on.
Well, to be honest, I had to do something because I was personally attacked. And speaking of which, if you don't be careful when you're speaking to the most dangerous man in European wrestling, which John Bad Bones Klinger, the Badness, most certainly is, personally attacked is something you could be as well, Bradshaw.
Well, that's lovely. And just in a show of your standard amount of class, eventually it's taken, 2 minutes, maybe 3 minutes before you've resorted to an indirect threat of physical violence. You know what? I'll tell you what. I'll be the bigger man here. And when you give up that trophy within the 30-day limit that General Amin has insisted upon, I will, for just £5, have a photo with you with it. How's that?
£5. And I suppose next you'll be telling me how many ruble or whatever it is £5 equates to in Russian money, won't you?
Yeah, it's 500 rubles.
Oh, God, you're something else. You know, you sit there on your tower, on your pedestal, and you tell people that I'm a piece of work. Well, you're something else, Dave Bradshaw. You, General Amin, Simon Miller, the whole lot of you. It's a vendetta. You're all out to get me.
Yeah, I know, it's terrible, isn't it? Should we change the subject
Please.
so that you don't sulk? I'm worried about your well-being, to be honest. So let's talk about Loaded this past week, and in particular that main event. We promised you a spectacular main event this past Sunday on Loaded, and it certainly delivered. Pac in his second match here in Defiant Wrestling against the debuting Robbie X, and what a main event it was. Pac picked up the victory in the end, but Robbie X with absolutely nothing to be ashamed of whatsoever.
Oh, he really doesn't. You know, you've perked me up a little bit, because I remember being at ringside calling that match with you when I still had the Commentator of the Year award, by the way. But anyway, in the end, Robbie X, on his debut in Defiant Wrestling, went toe-to-toe with Pac, and it was incredible. You know, in the end, Robbie X submitting to that Rings of Saturn submission, but I have to say that's quite fitting, because this main event, you'll like this, was out of this world.
Oh my God. Goodness me. I'll tell you what, though. Pac said he's been looking for competition. He said he's been looking for a certain level of opponent that he didn't feel like he'd found so far. I mean, David Starr gave him an incredible run for his money as well. Robbie X has now done the same. If Pac's looking for world-class opponents, I mean, there's no doubt he's found them now. And so the question is, what will Pac want next, having put away two opponents of such high caliber?
And also, Dave, if you look at the way Pac in those first two matches, his first two matches here in Defiant Wrestling, you know, he's won one by pinfall with that amazing red arrow off the top rope on David Starr. There was no way even the Jewish Cannon was getting up from that. And now, against the debuting Robbie X, Pac wins a match by submission. So I kind of have to wonder, is this Pac's own personal way of sending a message to the entire Defiant roster that, hey, I can beat you guys any way I like? You know, this guy's been to the top wherever he's been in pro wrestling. Defiant should be no different.
Well, certainly, I'm sure Pac will have his eye on the Defiant World title match at Magnificent 7. There's been a few more developments in that situation over the past week, which we'll talk about in a moment. But before we do, let's look ahead just a little bit less far ahead to this Sunday at Loaded. We've got the last Loaded before Magnificent 7, and what a show it's shaping up to be, because we have a trio of massive, massive matches this Sunday for free on YouTube from 8 p.m. UK time, not least of which is our main event for Sunday, which is the Defiant Tag Team title match. Aussie Open going to defend the Defiant Tag titles against a team who have completed a string of victories in the General Amin Tag Team Invitational. The South Coast Connection SCC challenge Aussie Open on Sunday.
It's going to be huge, because, you know, by the time this podcast goes live, Aussie Open, wait for this, Kyle Fletcher, Mark Davis, they will have been Defiant Tag Team Champions for 312 days. And that record stretches all the way back to No Regrets 2018, April 28th. Almost an entire calendar year of domination for Aussie Open. It's astounding. And I know you're not going to agree with this, Bradshaw, because, you know, you make no secret of it. You don't like this new attitude that the South Coast Connection have, but even you must admit that their new tactics have worked for them. You know, not only have they beaten teams like the Models, the Dynamic Duo, UK veterans like Jody Fleisch and Johnny Storm, but they also have exactly what they want. And in my mind, the SCC, they're fully deserving.
Yeah, but that begs the question, doesn't it? Why do they have to change their attitude in the first place? Because they've shown with this string of victories, although one or two of them were under dubious circumstances, on the whole, they have shown they have the talent that they deserve to be here. So why do they insist on phoning their mate Will Ospreay all the time and telling him how great they are and relying on his name to try and get themselves opportunities? I mean, I know we talk about this week in, week out, but it just, this sense of entitlement, this sense of deserving a title shot because of who they know rather than because of the talent that they undoubtedly have, is what's so annoying about them.
Here's what I think, and I know you're going to crap all over this. I really do. I can almost see your blood boiling when you hear this. But here is my honest appraisal of the situation. I think that the South Coast Connection have looked at the landscape in Defiant Wrestling, and they have watched how General Amin has doled out title shots using silly tactics for the past few months. And, you know, all these ridiculous side quests, if you like, that our general manager has been on with El Phantasmo, and all the lollipops things that are going on with his assistant, Simon Miller, and his own assistant, the assistant to an assistant, Adam Foster. I think the SCC have realised that they have to give our general manager and his staff no excuse, no reason to turn down their request for a tag team championship opportunity. And maybe whether anyone likes it or not, they believed the only way to do that was this change in attitude and to become a bit full of themselves, if you like, and start crowing about what they have to bring to the party, and maybe then people will listen. Because beforehand, nobody was listening. The SCC were the kind of guys who turned up and they almost made up the numbers. Now, that is not their fault. That is everyone else's fault. They were always talented young wrestlers, but that was the spot they were in. Now they have grabbed that brass ring, if you like, for lack of a better phrase, and they have what they want. I don't see anything wrong with that.
Yeah, no, nothing's ever their fault, is it? Whenever they lose a match, it's not their fault. Let me ask you this, though. Do you think there's a possibility that they are trying to run before they can walk? Yes, they've picked up, 4 consecutive victories in this tag team invitational. But as you correctly say, they're going to be facing the most dominant tag team in Defiant wrestling history. And yeah, they've picked up some wins of SCC, but that doesn't prove that they are at a level yet where they're able to take down Kyle Fletcher and Mark Davis. So I wonder whether they're getting a little bit overconfident if they think that based on 4 wins, 4 impressive wins, I grant you, but that is enough to put them on top of the mountain in terms of the tag team division here, because Aussie Open are more formidable than any duo we've ever seen.
Well, again, you're not going to like this, because you never like when I admit that I can be wrong sometimes. You know, you like to be the one that points that out, is what I mean. You don't like to give me the opportunity to say, hey, I'm putting my hand up and I'm admitting that sometimes I don't call it correctly.
Can we just take as a given that I don't like anything you say? So you don't have to preface it every time. It's fine. We all know that I don't like when you speak.
I think it is a given. Because we all know this conspiracy has been raging on. You know, it's maybe jealousy, I don't know, maybe my fashion sense or something. But anyway, you know, I wish you'd stop making this about you and me, because it's really not about us. It's about the SCC. But here's where I'm going to almost contradict myself, because, you know, I'm saying that the South Coast Connection, they've earned this tag team championship opportunity. They certainly have. And by my heavy praise of them, I'm almost making Dunn and Six out to be the favourites in this match. Now, this isn't the first time they've faced Aussie Open, by the way. Not even in Defiant Wrestling, but that's a separate point. My point here is that the SCC are going up against the single greatest tag team in professional wrestling today. You know, they hold the prize that everyone wants, those Defiant tag team titles, and Aussie Open have held them for almost a calendar year, as I said. Now, this is going to take some beating. Fletcher and Davis, they have chemistry like arguably no other team can boast about. Worldwide, not only in Defiant Wrestling. Is this almost a step too far for the SCC? As you say, are they running before they can walk? Maybe, but you know, you have to put yourself in the frame for that opportunity. They have earned the opportunity. That's the real issue for me here. But this is going to be one to keep your eye on, because what happens if the South Coast Connection get beaten by Aussie Open? Do they slide all the way back to the bottom of that ladder, or do they go to General Amin and demand a rematch?
Well, I think what they'll probably start doing is start sulking and try and phone Will Ospreay immediately, won't they? I'm not sure, by the way, that Will Ospreay will take their calls. I mean, I'm not sure that he's quite as endeared to them as they think he is. But anyway, let's talk about the other 2 matches that are huge matches announced for this Sunday's Loaded. First of all, it's a match that was postponed for 2 weeks thanks to the now suspended Gabriel Kidd. David Starr is going to go one-on-one with the prestigious one, Joe Hendry. Now, we don't know whether Starr is at 100%. I think we assume that he isn't, given how brutal that assault was from Kidd. He is sufficiently recovered that our doctors have decided to medically clear him to compete against Hendry this week. So if Starr is somewhere close to 100%, could he get back to winning ways, still reeling, of course, from that loss to Pac on Loaded a few weeks ago? Could he, and then, of course, that loss to Rampage as well at Unstoppable. So despite all of that, can Starr get back to winning ways by beating Joe Hendry?
Well, it's the $1 million question, but I would have to say that you're very brave if you enter a professional wrestling ring against a prestigious one at 100%. Never mind, 30, 40, maybe as much as 50% like David Starr could be. There's no way he's recovered. No way that he is 100%. No way he's close to that at all. This is a dangerous situation because David Starr, if he enters that ring against Joe Hendry and, he gets up in Hendry's face and he roars defiantly, pun intended, in the prestigious one's face, then Joe Hendry will have no choice. As much as he respects David Starr, he will have no choice but to put him down. And, we talk about the SCC sliding back down the ladder if they lose to Aussie Open. This is more of a mental thing for David Starr. If he loses to Joe Hendry here, his psyche is going to be all over the place. So let me pose a question to you. If you're entering this match as David Starr and you're not at 100% and you know that Joe Hendry is at peak physical health and also he has some serious momentum behind him as well, Joe Hendry always a super ambitious individual. He wants to get back in the championship hunt here in Defiant Wrestling as well. If you're David Starr, you're not 100%, do you even accept this match? That might be a controversial thought, and you might call me a coward for even thinking it. But David Starr has to think long-term here. He can't go into this match wounded and then expect to come out healthy. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, well, I think interestingly, right before that attack by Gabriel Kidd, we had cameras on David Starr, obviously, and what we saw was him kind of mumbling almost maniacally to himself about how I should be champion, I should be champion, I should be champion. Obviously there has been a huge psychological toll to that pair of defeats he suffered against Pac and then against Rampage at Unstoppable. So, yes, I mean, to lose to Hendry, granted, most outsiders will say, well, if you do lose, it's at least in part because you're nowhere near to 100%. But in his mind, that's another defeat, another nail in the coffin of his own self-confidence. And so, yeah, the sensible thing to do if you're David Starr, and if I was advising David Starr, I would say, you know what, this next match, whoever it's against, if it's going to be against Joe Hendry, great, but you've got to wait. You've got to wait until you are 100%, until you're ready to go, because this is such an important match for you to win mentally, to get back on that in that right kind of rhythm, that right kind of momentum psychologically, and get yourself back on in that winning mentality that he absolutely shouldn't be doing it this week. But David Starr wouldn't listen to that. If I, to answer your question directly, if I was David Starr, of course I would be going ahead this week, because that is, if I was David Starr, that would be my personality. David Starr is exactly the kind of person who wants to compete. He's not really prepared to accept any physical limitations to himself, even if they were not self-imposed. They were imposed by Gabriel Kidd, but he still won't accept that means he can't win, and that might be his Achilles heel here.
It's dangerous, though. It really is dangerous because, as I say, going face-to-face, toe-to-toe with Joe Hendry at any point is dangerous because he is such a well-studied athlete. He will, believe me, Joe Hendry, he'll have had sleepless nights studying the work and everything to do with David Starr. Absolutely everything. His workout plan, his diet, everything. That's how analytical Joe Hendry is. And that is how, studious he has been since day one. And I just think this is very, very ill-advised from David Starr. Yes, he wants to prove that he's a fighting professional wrestler, that he wants to, exorcise those demons that have been following him in Defiant Wrestling for the longest time. But God, this might not be the time. Sometimes you just have to put your hand up and say, physically, I'm not able. And I really fear for the guy in this match because, again, if Joe Hendry wants to, he could really seriously hurt David Starr.
Well, on the subject of people who are putting themselves under tremendous psychological pressure, we're going to have to be brief here because we do have our special guest. I use the word special loosely, coming up in a few moments' time. But there is another match announced for Loaded this week. It is a women's tag team match as Kanji, the women's champion, is going to team with Bea Priestley, the former champion, to take on Lana Austin and Lizzie Styles. And I think it's fair to say Kanji is in a pretty fragile place psychologically. She was hoping to prove herself by defeating Bea Priestley a couple of weeks back in that one-on-one match, that women's match for the women's title match, Obviously, that couldn't happen thanks to the interference by Austin and Styles. And so, again, Kanji has to go another few days with her critics still saying, well, you haven't picked up a big win. So she's another one who really needs a victory on Sunday.
You know, Kanji, I talk about demons following David Starr. Kanji is very quickly in the same boat as the product. You know, yes, she is the Defiant Women's Champion, and yes, she did come out of nowhere to win that championship, and yes, she will say that she deserves to be the champion. You can't argue that when she has the championship in her midst, but wins and losses, at the end of the day, they are what a professional wrestler lives and dies by. You know, that win-loss record, you certainly want to have more wins than you have losses. And lately, Kanji, okay, some matches have ended in you know, almost a non-finish, if you like. But the crucial thing is, Kanji didn't win. And that must eat her alive. You know, you're talking to a champion. You must, if you're Kanji, Dave, you have to look at what Rampage and Aussie Open are doing with their respective titles in the same company, on the same roster, on the same card, and you must think, I wish that was me. And now Kanji goes from that match against Bea Priestley, where she had the opportunity to prove the world wrong. Kanji now teams with Bea Priestley. And what happens if stunning Lana Austin and this new threat of Lizzie Styles somehow beat Kanji? What if Kanji ends up being the weak link in that team with Priestley? Is there any way back? Could we see her crumble? Will she then go on to lose the Defiant Women's Championship? So many questions, so few answers. I certainly don't have any answers. All we're going to do is sit and watch.
Yeah, it's certainly a big night for the Defiant Women's Champion this coming Sunday. All right, well, this should be interesting because I slightly reluctantly now have to say that our producers just indicated our special guest this week is on the line. I say our special guest, James R. Kennedy. Actually, it's really yours, isn't it? Because I didn't invite this man at all.
Hey, listen, Bradshaw, for the longest time, you perpetrated this series of lies, this web of lies about who won the Commentator of the Year. I won it fair and square, and then you come out here with all this evidence, you try and humiliate me, you fabricate these phone calls with people from Moscow and Russia. I'm sick and tired of it. So I have, at my own expense, decided to bring in a man, a guest, who is befitting of the ReLoaded podcast, and I am talking about the one and only. I'm talking about the most dangerous man in European wrestling today, the Badness, John Klinger.
How are you,
Good
Mr.
to be
Klinger?
on the show, Mr. Kennedy. I mean, who else is talking there? Who's it out of person right there?
Oh, I'm here. You know who it is.
Oh. Don't go crazy on me, yeah? Relax, yeah? You just shut up right now.
Yeah, it's hard to relax when someone's shouting at me, telling me to shut up.
Shut up, because I'm talking to a man who earns to be the commentator of the year, you know. James R. Kennedy. What an excellent person. What an inspiration to everyone. Hey, Bradshaw, you should actually take notice, because that's how you do it.
All right. Well, listen, we've got lots of questions for you.
Why is he talking?
Because I have to move this along and actually ask some questions, which is the purpose of your being a guest here. It's not just to...
I'll give you an answer, and maybe I'm going to change the question, and you give me the answer. I don't freaking know.
Oh, this is going to be torture. All right. Well, look, here's a question for you. We've had lots of questions, but first of all, I want to know what your reaction is to what happened on Loaded this past Sunday, because, of course, after your victory against Adam Foster, you were taken by surprise somewhat, I think, by that video clip from Justin Sizem challenging you to a rematch at Magnificent 7 in Sunderland on March 16th. What's your reaction to his challenge?
Oh, surprise, surprise, the superhuman is back. Well, I'll tell you something right now. I am his kryptonite. And maybe the last time I didn't finish him, I didn't end him because I want him to suffer. I wanted him to suffer. And he was suffering. Look, his throat, his face, it's demolished. It's not a superhuman anymore. You know, the badness. took over
So,
and took him out. Will you just shut up? I am not finished talking. If somebody wants to ask me a question, it's James R. Kennedy.
Well, allow me, Mr. Klinger, to ask you a proper question, and one befitting of your status as the most dangerous man in European wrestling. Now, we all remember 2018 was a huge year for you in Defiant Wrestling. You know, you won the Ringmaster tournament, you challenged Rampage for that Defiant World Heavyweight Championship, and for my money, going into that match, I have to say you were the firm favourite. But my question to you is, you know, Justin Sysum, once you've dealt with him, is your ultimate goal to get back in the hunt for championships in Defiant Wrestling?
Well, let me tell you, if I end Justin Sysum, when I have ended Justin Sysum at Magnificent 7, I will go back as the number one contender. I will take out everyone who's there, who's in my way. I will hurt them, then I will hunt them, and then I will end them forever. They won't be seen and defined anymore because the Badness does what he wants, and nothing means nothing.
nothing means nothing.
Yes, nothing means nothing, and nothing is what it looks like. Do you want to know how it is to mess with a...
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, let me tell you something. Me neither. And I'm still talking because I am the man, and I will be the number one in Defiant.
Well, you know what? We've actually had a couple of questions on that along those lines. A couple of our regular contributors to the podcast, Kimmy and Kieran, both saying, what's next for you after you beat Justin Sysum? They're assuming that you do beat him. Club Coverstone saying, will you return to the hardcore title division and try and win that championship back? So, assuming you get past Justin Sysum, which, by the way, let's not forget, you didn't last time. Justin Sysum actually beat you last time you competed. But if you beat him at Magnificent 7, what is the plan going forwards?
I didn't beat him, right? I didn't beat him. Did he walk down that aisle as a winner? He wasn't on his feet. He was laying down, bleeding out of his mouth. Did you see that? Did you see that? Did you notice that? Yeah?
I saw it, yeah.
Yeah? Wasn't that hardcore enough for you? I don't need any hardcore title. I am hardcore all the way. Because I destroy people in that ring when I want, how I want. And I think what's next? I think there's one commentator who's annoying me pretty much. And it's not James R. Kennedy.
See, this is what bugs me about you. This is what bugs a lot of people about you, is this fact that you think you can just intimidate everybody. You're doing it to Stevie Aaron. When you get in there with more junior wrestlers than you, a man like Darius, Adam Foster, you try not just to beat them, but to put them on the shelf permanently. What's your problem?
Well, you know, maybe I am a little bit insane. Just a little bit. And I don't intimidate people. I just say what it is. The deal is, I hate people. I hate you. I hate that little guy who gave birth to something special. I hate Simon Miller. I hate Justin Sysum. And at Magnificent 7, you will see what I'm going to do when I hate somebody even more. I let him suffer before. He's able to talk. He's able to walk. But after I'm done with him, you won't see him anymore.
Well, I think you've already given us as much of an answer as we're probably going to get on this question, but we've had a question from Alex Kingdom at AlexKing_Dom saying, what's your goal by attacking all these people after matches? It's barbaric.
Yes, it is, isn't it?
Yeah, so why do it? Why be proud of that?
The question is, why not?
Because you could try and have an ounce of humanity in you and try and treat your opponents like fellow human beings.
Humanity. No. That I lost that long time ago because there are some voices in my head, And the eyes don't lie, you know. No. Humanity. No.
Well,
Dave, can I just interject here and say that, to be honest, you know, usually on this podcast, you're so full of yourself with your opinions, and that's fine. But when we had General Amin on the ReLoaded podcast, you were sucking up to him like there was no tomorrow. So my question to you, Dave, not to intrude on Mr. Klinger's time, but why are you being such a bitch towards the most dangerous man in European wrestling when you have witnessed firsthand what John Klinger is capable of?
Because you've invited him onto this podcast just as an excuse, just as a diversion from what's going on with you this week. And I think if we're going to have someone on the podcast, then we have a responsibility to ask them the difficult questions. And you might not be brave enough to do that, but that's my job as a journalist, is to ask the questions that fans want to know. And on that note, I have one more. This isn't actually from a fan. This is from a man you just talked about. Man like DeReese has messaged in, and he wants to know, or he said to me, can you ask Klinger why he's such a waste man?
Man like DeReese did actually ask you via Twitter, right?
He did. He sent a message.
Wow. Is he such a nerd that he has to ask by Twitter? Wow. So I don't even waste my time with that.
So you're not going to answer the question?
I don't answer to any nerds.
And a man like DeReese is a nerd, is he?
He's a nerd.
Well, he could be the winner. He could be the winner of the Magnificent Seven in 2 weeks' time.
He went to the hospital and gave birth to something special. I don't care.
All right. Well, I don't know how much longer we need to have this this guest, in inverted commas, on with us. James, do you have any more questions?
Can I ask you a question, actually?
Go on. I mean, that's not how interviews really work, but go on.
I told you I will change the question, so you have to answer. You understand that? Yeah?
All right. What's your question?
Why don't you look like a man? Why don't you have such a beautiful beard like myself and James R. Kennedy? Why? Why the hell do you stand backstage all the time, eating all that catering, sucking up to people? What is your problem? Huh?
What? Sorry, why don't I have a bit? Because I actually believe that if you're going to appear on television, you should maybe have a shave and actually look vaguely presentable.
Right, you should have a shape. That's right.
A shave. A shave.
A shape. That is nothing you have. Look at you. You might be tall, but you are a scumbag. And when I see you, I am disgusted. I am really disgusted. And my gut, it is just like, I feel like I have to vomit all the time.
I don't know. Am I supposed to respond to that? James, do you want to say anything?
To be honest, Bradshaw, I am enjoying every single second of this because I can tell that you are quaking in your boots. You know, it's not going to be long until you have to be in the same building as the Badness. And I really worry for you, my friend. I really, really do. You like to talk a big game every single week on this podcast, and I hear with every tick of this clock and every second that passes that you are scared. It's wonderful.
No, it's not about me, is it? It's about the fact that John Klinger has much bigger issues on his plate than anything I have to say to him, because he's going in...
I don't have any issues.
Well, you have a pretty big issue facing you on March 16th, sir. I can tell you that, because you are going to go one-on-one with the most fired-up Justin Sizem I have ever seen. I've known Justin Sizem for quite some time, and I have never seen him with that much intensity in his eyes as we saw on that video on Loaded this week.
Fired up. So I have to burn him down. He will feel the badness.
So what is the goal? What is the goal against Justin Sizem at Magnificent Seven? Do you really, having almost finished his career last time, do you want to actually retire a man? You want to actually end a man's career just because you can? Is that honestly what you want to do to him?
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, I think people can draw their own conclusions on what kind of human being that makes you. But do you have any final words for our listeners here on the ReLoaded podcast before we thankfully move on and talk about something else?
Whenever the badness hits the building, fear will always be there. And the thing is, When the fear is there, the badness has won already. This German psycho right here will show you what it means to be the number one.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, the German psycho, John Bad Bones Klinger. Well, I'm a little bit speechless. What on earth was that?
It was a thing of beauty. Is what did you know? Okay, this is an audio podcast, so no one can see your face, but I'm damn sure everyone can imagine what it looks like. Way to put you in your place, Bradshaw. I could tell that you were quaking in your boots.
I mean, he's unhinged. He's not all there, is he?
He's the badness. You know, I've said it before on Defiant Wrestling Loaded broadcasts. I've said it on pay-per-view. I used to say it for a tag team long, long ago. Forget that, though, because this is all about John Klinger. The badness does whatever the badness wants.
All right, well, let's change the subject, shall we? In fact, actually, I think we're going to have to finish entirely because we're just about out of time. We didn't have time today to talk any more about the Defiant World title match that's coming up at Magnificent 7. There have been developments, of course, this week, including the champion Rampage and the challenger Rory Coyle. If you saw the last few minutes of Loaded on Sunday night, you will have been, I'm sure, as disturbed as I was by the latest video nasty from Rory Coyle, but we'll go into that in some more detail next week as we run down the entire card for Magnificent 7 on our last podcast before that big show in Sunderland on March 16th. There are still tickets available if you want to join us in Sunderland. wearedefiant.com/tickets for those. If you can't be there in person but you want to watch it live online, of course you can do that at Access Defiant. The website for that is access.wearedefiant.com. And of course, if you are a new customer, you get that 30-day free trial, so you can see Magnificent 7 essentially for free. If you want to join the conversation online, please join us using the hashtag WeAreDefiant. You can tweet us at DefiantRes, that's Defiant, WRES. You can tweet me at Dave Bradshaw, and you can tweet James R. Kennedy at TopClassKennedy. And that will just about do it. We will see you on Sunday for another episode of Loaded, including those 3 big matches that have been announced in advance. Headlined, of course, by the Defiant Tag Team Championship match between Aussie Open and SCC. We'll see you on Sunday. Thank you for listening to the ReLoaded podcast, and we will see you again here next week.